What's up, guys? Welcome, and thanks for joining for another casted replay. Today, we have a ranked 1v1 match between myself, playing Tzeentch, and my opponent, Galrock, playing on the Greenskins. Okay, jumping right in to take a look at the army compositions, as we always do. For my opponent, we have Grimgor Ironhide himself, the Lord, the biggest and baddest orc there is, with all his abilities. So a very strong melee combatant lord. In his front line, it looks like he has a mix of squigs, which are armor piercing and anti-infantry. Pretty tough little unit, good anti-infantry unit, but they do suffer from low leadership and rampaging. So if you can do enough damage to them, they will rout off fairly easily. Looks like more goblin spearmen, squigs, more, oh, it's going to take me over that pipe, and more goblin spearmen. Way out on the flank, we have some orc boy biggins who are anti-large and they're anti-large and armor piercing, so very strong, good kind of anti-cavalry type unit. And providing support, they have some goblin spider riders, which would provide poison and can... No, they're Vanguard deployment, but these ones don't fire. They're just the melee variety. So they'll be providing poison for the Orc Boy Biggins, which causes the units they attack to slow and do less damage. So a good kind of supporting mini cavalry unit. And he also rocking a, no pun intended, a giant rogue idol. These bad boys right here are basically just a giant blob of stone. They have 3 phases of an AoE Rubble and Ruin. This progressively gets stronger as he loses more health, and it drops rocks around him, providing AoE damage to whatever mob of infantry this thing is in the middle of. Rocking 16,000 HP, so this thing is tanky as hell, 150 armor, and 100 leadership, so this will not rout. It has armor piercing, anti-infantry bonus with 600 weapon damage, so pretty nasty, but it is slow, and it is huge, so it's also a big target. In his backline, providing support for the rest of his infantry, he has Orc Arrow Boys, which are basically Orc Archers. And they're also they're a decent melee combatant as well, so if they get in trouble, these guys can jump in and join the Royal Rumble. And way over on the Orcs' left side, we have some more Forest Goblin Spider Riders and 2 units of Orc Boy Biggins. So quite a mobile... army composition here with a little bit of a weaker infantry unit, I would say. These are not any kind of like high tier infantry units, but they do have Grimgor. Oh, and I almost missed. They have an Orc Shaman here rocking the Brain Buster, a little AoE explosion. Fist of Gork providing magical attacks, melee defense, and melee attack plus 24. And here we go, melee attack plus 40. For all the units in the surrounding area of, I think it was 35 meters, whatever it said. So some big buffs there, and the Orc passive is Wog, for those of you that don't know. So after they build up their bar being in combat for a certain amount of time, they get all kinds of melee and physical bonuses while they're fighting. So over on the other side, for myself, we have playing as Tzeentch, probably, I'm going to say, I'm not a huge Tzeentch player, but I'm going to say this is a very non-meta build. I don't have any new DLC units or anything crazy, any big monsters. I pretty much just went with quite a standard army, really. Front line of Spearmen and Marauders of Tzeentch. These guys here are just basically like a 500 gold type unit. Nothing too special, just my front line with spears out on the edges and a couple more spears sort of in the mid to back to help protect some of my range. And my ranged are Pink Horrors of Tzeentch. These guys are pretty cool. They do fire damage and magic damage and have a pretty decent range and can go into melee combat if they need to once they run out of ammo or something gets on top of them. And behind my 4 units of Pink Horrors of Tzeentch, we have my Flamers of Tzeentch. They're shorter range, but these guys do huge damage. They rock blue fire, magic damage, and regular fire. WARPFLAME, it's called, I suppose, which makes them weaker to fire. So, and their armor piercing and 304 missile strength, but they only have 10, so got to make my shots count. But that's a very strong unit when it gets going. And I also had, yes, Chaos Warriors of Tzeentch. These are my anti-large, armored, armor piercing. So these guys are pretty tough, and they're more or less my, even though they're only a tier 2 unit, they're basically my most elite infantry that I have right now. And for my lord, he's floating around here somewhere. We have a Herald of Tzeentch, just a little mage that floats around, and he's got blue and pink fire. And I also took Infernal Gateway if I get a good chance to drop it, but it's a very expensive spell. It's a big vortex AoE. Good spell, but very expensive, so I'll probably stick to Blue Fire of Tzeentch and Pink Fire of Tzeentch for magic damage, just because they're cheap and I can use it more times. And for a Vanguard, not using them in the Vanguard, because the Orcs don't usually have archers and catapults and things that I really want to get onto right away. I kept them in the back more or less to pick a target once I could see my opponent's army. So let's get things started, speed it up here a little bit. I see what the composition my unit has, which is quite mobile on the wings, pretty high threat on both the wings, and in the middle he has this giant rogue idol, so I was a little bit worried about getting surrounded and then smashed down through the middle with that big rogue idol, so I start moving my army back to get a little better position. Now, when I started, I was out here in a pretty normal position. I'm not a corner camper. I don't like camping the corners, and I don't like when other people do it. So when the game started, I was here. I was definitely not corner camping, but just the way I'm being approached so wide like this, I decide I'm going to tighten up a little bit, use the terrain to my advantage, and try to get a better position before the armies close together. Sending out my Screamers of Tzeentch. I feel pretty good sending these guys out. There's not a lot that's going to hit them besides these archers, so I just send them out. They take this weird path over the pipe. I always find this pipe a little weird and annoying, so for whatever reason they can't fly under it. They'd have to go right on top of it, and then they're just going to dive bomb onto these orc archers in the back. Try to soften them up or take them out before they can even approach my army. That's the plan anyway, and doing pretty good damage. On the flanks, my opponent moves his cavalry into position, getting to the edge at the best he can while his main army closes in. But right now, buying some time for my main army to get into a better position, while my Screamers kind of hold up the back line a little bit and cause a little bit of havoc back there, and my Lord starts throwing down a Pink Fire of Tzeentch, softening up those Goblin Archers. They're not going to like that if I get to throw too many of those at them, but I back my Lord up. His barrier gets almost taken off by these archers and stuff, so we're just going to back him up a little bit. Don't want him taking a bunch of damage right away. Squigs try to make a little move in, but Spearmen cut them off. Squigs aren't going to want to take that fight. The Spearmen should do well against them, so they just kind of chase them off and keep them back. Not going to let them sneak past and get to the juicy back line where all my range damage is. So army continuing to get into a position here, trying to get a little tighter, while my Vanguard basically does as much damage as they can and buys more time. Now, both my spear units here are getting charged by Orc Big Boys, or Biggins, whatever the hell they're called, and they're going to do fine. They're spearmen, they're anti-large. This is a matchup they'll take all day, especially 2 units of them. They should be completely fine right here, so we're not going to worry about that. They've already routed up. They've already made the Squigs rampage and rout off, and next they'll be turning on to the Orc Boy Biggins, so they probably won't want to hang around there. In the back line, my Tzeentch, I'm able to pull back 1 unit and recharge their shield, but 1 gets completely destroyed, getting surrounded by Squigs and archers and this rogue idol, so they're completely destroyed, but they did do some good damage to his back line, so not totally upset about that, but could have gone a little better. Screamers, I decided to bring them in again. They have to show off a little bit and dive over this pipe before they can come down on these archers, but that's what they're going to do. Being a little aggressive into his back line, but at the same time, it's buying me time, so that's fine. Spearmen, routing off the Squigs and making the Orc Big Boys back up a little bit. They don't want to get poked by all these spears for very long. Lord just kind of chilling, taking some shots at whatever gets close to him, recharging his shield, recharging his mana. Wid's magic, I should say. And in the back line, My Screamers do dive down on these guys, but the Rogue Idol decides to come in and do some smashing on them. He'll probably end up smashing more of his own units than these Screamers, but that's fine. That's the way she goes. Now, getting these Spearmen back into position. Before the two armies really even came together, we have, with just a couple units of Flamers, or a couple units of Screamers, sorry, and a couple of Flame attacks using my Lord, we actually have softened up the Orc army pretty good. Their archers are fairly low. We've got a couple squigs that are run off and one that's quite low, and some good poke on the front line. So besides his mobility, we've done some pretty good damage to him so far. So we're just going to hold up here, wait for him to approach, because if he doesn't, he's just going to keep getting picked at and poked down. So he's probably going to make a move here so he doesn't just get picked apart. These Screamers still fairly healthy. Made them retreat a little bit because Tzeentch units all have a barrier. For those of you that don't know, they all have a barrier on top of their health bar that will recharge. If you played StarCraft, it's kind of like the Protoss. So when your shields get low, if you can, it's always good to try to retreat and charge those back up, which I did with these guys. But the archers take their shield back off as I approach these squigs that were low. So I thought, why not take them out? They rout again. So this will try to be used as a little mobile unit just to run off low things. But yeah, they get completely destroyed here by Orc Spider Riders and Orc Boy Biggins. So they're not having a good time, but yeah, that's what you get for landing in a bunch of orcs. Okay, let's just fast forward here a tiny bit as the armies come together. So don't want you guys to have to wait too long to see some action. My Lord doing a little poke on the front line, but taking a little poke back himself. So now that the armies are coming close together, soon these pink horrors are probably going to start unloading. I put my Flamers of Tzeentch up here. I thought, this would be a great piece of landscape here to hide behind, because, you know, they're obviously not going to come up over this. But I didn't realize at the time they actually won't shoot over this. I still have to come down here, which is good. It kind of makes sense, so it's not too cheesy. Now, as the front lines close together, we have Squigs kind of just chilling and stopping right here. I'm not sure why. Must have forgot to finish that order. So they take a volley from the pink horrors and start to rampage immediately right into a bunch of spears. Orc Shaman gets into the front line, providing leadership and whatever buffs and bonuses he's going to here in a minute. While archers support their front line, spears move in, trying to break through my front line. On the right, I have a couple spear units over here, not really doing anything. He chose to come in towards the middle with his left side mobility, so we're going to come in, get those guys into the action. Lord cruises around the back line, poking away at routing units and putting down a pink fire of Tzeentch on top of these archers, going to try to make them rout off, actually diving right in just to start a fight and stop them from shooting. So shutting down their range so that mine can just kind of fire at will. Getting some good contact in on these orcs, firing in on this big clump of spearmen and Orc Boy Biggins. Yeah, getting some good value, some good damage in on those guys while my spearmen hold the line. Grimgor getting right in there, but he's fighting with Chaos Warriors of Tzeentch with halberds, which are armored and armor-piercing and anti-large, so that's a good matchup for them. These should be the guys that are kind of handling Grimgor at the moment. Rogue Idol breaks through the front line and begins to head towards the back line, it looks like, but then he changes targets, decides to come help out his Lord over here, which is probably not a bad idea. And I switch targets off the Rogue Idol. I do want to take him out, but I want to use my range to take care of as much of his army as I possibly can. Lord, back here just chilling, waiting to use some Winds of Magic and find another target. His mobility here, I would say he probably should be cycle charging these, but he kind of leaves them just in melee with my Marauders, and my Blue Flamers finally get a volley off on these guys, and they're going to start doing some work. They'll make these guys weaker to fire damage while doing even more damage. So that's fine if he just wants to sit there and let those fire away on him. Pulling back the spears just to stay tighter to my ranged units, because eventually something will get through, and we're going to need some melee units to run interference. Grimgor beats the living crap out of my Chaos Warriors. There goes my elite infantry. Orc Boy Biggins and Grimgor plus the Rogue Idol do a number on those guys. They are anti-large, but that's just a Little too much, and this guy's just a little too large and a little too in charge to be stopped at the moment. But pink horrors, all pretty healthy. Firing into the enemy front line, doing a good job. These ones taking a little bit of fire from his archers. Couldn't quite get those ones taken out, but that's okay. Rogue Idol decides, all right, enough's enough. We're heading for the back line, so I immediately start microing my pink horrors to get them out of the way. Don't want them running into this Rogue Idol at all. That's one of the worst things that could get on top of them. Lord, just chilling. He's shooting blue fires and pink fires every once in a while when he can. Just doing whatever damage he can. And in the meantime, he is actually a missile unit. Oh, he's out of missiles now, so he must have shot them all. But they don't do a hell of a lot of damage, but it's a little bit of poke. It's a little something. Front line looking pretty stable besides this Rogue Idol that seemed to get back here. We bring a unit of spears over to try to get in his way and keep him busy. Actually, 2 spears and getting a pretty good surround on him, so that's pretty good. My opponent pops WOG, so all these units now have a base weapon damage bonus of plus 25, armor, piercing weapon damage plus 25, and something else, their melee attack I think was plus 24, so that's the Orc WOG when they're in melee, and that's when you gotta watch out, because those guys are going to be doing some big damage when the WOG is active, plus the other abilities that he has with his caster. I'm dropping down a bombardment, which is one of Tzeentch's passive abilities. I took the biggest one I could, getting down a nice hail of fire on these middle units here, doing a good job hitting a lot of his cavalry. Blue and pink fire continue to fire in, just completely routing them off after that bombardment. So that's a little bit of punishment for him clumping up right here in front of all this ranged and my caster. Now we start turning our attention to this Rogue Idol. This thing's gotta go. He's just gonna keep wreaking havoc. We've done some pretty good damage with our spears, but he's chewed through a lot of my spears. There goes one of his phases of his AoE passive. And as you can see, it does a ton of damage to all these spears around. Routes them off, at both of them. Routes them both off. So that's pretty nasty. That's why you don't want any of your valuable ranged units getting close to this guy. But we also kind of out-micro him. He's very slow, so I spread out all my ranged units, and they just get to fire at will and just roast this big guy as he eats all kinds of magic damage. He's not long for this world, this big old rock pile. It's going to be turned into gravel here right about now, and bye-bye. Elsewhere on the battlefield, now that Rogue Idol's done, we decide to lock on to some other targets, or start trying to find some other targets. Grimgor gets into some pink and blue horrors here, so we're going to want to start spreading that out. He is nasty. He's nasty when he gets on your melee units, so you don't want him on your range units. He uses his big old AoE explosion, which does a good amount of damage, takes the shield off of both of my units, so we're going to start spreading out, getting away from there. Lord shooting down the blue fire of Tzeentch onto Grimgor. Good for single targets and big entities. Should do some pretty good damage. Spears running interference on these other goblin spears while the pink horrors continue to back up. These Marauders, I'm not sure where they came from, somewhere way off on the side. They must have been chasing off a unit and kind of got forgotten about, so they're coming back to join the battle, which I will need because everything else is committed to another target. Pink horrors finishing off these spears shouldn't be a problem for them. These units will, yeah. A couple of volleys from that and they're pretty much done, so backline, pretty cleaned up, pretty safe for now. But it has chewed through a lot of my front line. Still has a little bit of mobility here. Some Orc Boy Biggins coming up the hill. They're going to try to get in on some of this stuff. And Grimgor himself actually coming back from my range. He wants to get some chopping done, but we're just going to continue to avoid him as much as possible. We do not want that fight. Spreading out my pink horrors so he can't get a big clump here, which is what he probably wants. We're just going to keep them spread out and keep the spears in front of his mobility to keep them off of my pink horrors. As I, don't mean to sound like a broken record here, but this is my win condition, all these pink horrors. So we're going to keep them firing, doing a good job. My blue horrors ran out of ammunition, so I just send them in melee so they can stand. Grimgor is going to make short work of these guys. He's absolutely going to chop them in half. But they have the support of the pink horrors, so should work out pretty good. My lord, in his back line, runs off low and routing units. Floating around, he's got lots of mobility, so it's kind of handy. And being a caster, he can throw a few spells when he needs to. The Orc Shaman, surrounded by spearmen and marauders, and now my lord jumping in to help, so we should be able to take care of this guy pretty good. We've got him pretty surrounded. These guys should get some good hits on him. Grimgor completely surrounded by pink fire. He is getting dunked on right now, so feeling pretty good back here. He did get to my back line, but that's fine. I spread these guys out into a beautiful little trifecta, and he is right in the middle of the killing zone. And these Marauders are just going to come in to hold him in place so these pink flamers can fire away. Most of the Orc units now all routed off. He has no more ranged. His Orc Shaman is still alive. He must have chewed through some of my melee units. He's probably going to run off those Spearmen here pretty soon, but I have more coming in to help back up now that the rest of the back line's cleaned up, and it's just going to turn into a little bit of Lord on Lord action here. Well, not my Lord, but his Lord and his Shaman are basically the only thing holding the line, still holding quite a bit of value for the Greenskins, because if they get on the right targets, they will do some good damage. And Grimgor decides, yeah, that's a good plan. I'm going to go get on a right target, but there is no right target when you can't get to the target. Throwing down a bombardment here, didn't really need to, just thought, you know what, that might be kind of fun. Let's check it out, coming in from the Chaos Warp there. Meant to hit these guys, but they were basically routing before my Lord even approached, so yeah, a little bit of a waste, but don't really need it for anything else. Grimgor, just a matter of time, slow and painful death, getting ground down by these pink horrors of Tzeentch. We'll just move ahead a little bit. Lord jumps in to help take out the Orc Shaman. There'll be no more coming out of him, and that's pretty much it right there. Pink horrors, a couple more volleys. Would have finished off Grimgor. My Lord was completely healthy, so very fun game, very close. I was really worried when I saw that Rogue Idol and all the mobility that he had, because we were just playing Tzeentch as a pretty standard army, just infantry and ranged, and a Lord with a couple of spells. So yeah, that was fun. I've tried this build against different armies and mixed results. Sometimes it's really close, sometimes I get murdered, and other times it ends up like this where I do a pretty good job, and as long as you can keep that ranged online, you should be all right. So thanks for dropping by. Hope you guys enjoyed the replay. We definitely have more to come. We've got some 2v2s, we've got some pro players, and some other types of games that we're going to be casting. So hope to see you guys in more videos in the future. So thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.